Throughout American history, hate groups like the Ku Klux Klan and the American Nazi Party and the Aryan Nation and on, have targeted racial minorities and religious minorities. They targeted Jewish Americans, Catholic Americans. They targeted groups, they demonstrated in the streets, in front of churches, and they put signs like these, where Irish need not apply, Mexicans are not welcome. And African Americans took the brunt of it with lynches and church burnings. But the worst was when our government, who is supposed to protect our religious rights based on the Constitution, actually violated those. Back in World War II, they placed the Japanese Americans in internment camps. There are talks today of placing Muslim Americans in internment camps. It's a serious talk. And the current government has really legitimized a lot of hate groups across the country who were on the margins during last year's election season. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, there are over 895 hate groups like some here in Florida. Many of those are inspired by faith leaders. I'm a faith leader, and I take offense when faith leaders use religion and God to promote hate. But Pastor Pat Robertson, he declared on national television that Islam is not a religion. Pastor Rod Parsley, he claimed that America was actually founded to destroy Islam. I did not read that in the history books. But he is going out there trying to convince politicians that Islam is an ideology that should be outlawed. And Pastor Robert Jeffress from First Baptist in Dallas, he is the head of the Southern Baptist Convention, and he declared on television that Islam is a religion made by the devil himself. He has the ear of the president. This rhetoric has led to a lot of rise in hate. Hate crimes against Muslims went up by 50% last year. These 3 young people, medical students, were shot in their apartment by their neighbor just because they were Muslims. 2 imams were shot in front of their mosque in New York City in broad daylight. Armed groups like these demonstrated in front of mosques across the country, shouting, "This is a white Christian country. Go home. You don't belong here." And if Muslims were demonstrating like this, it would be all over the news. These people don't want any mosques around, don't want to see any Muslims here. And they are doing whatever it takes to intimidate Muslims across the country. Indeed, many have chosen to leave the country while this administration is in place. But these groups haven't stopped there with the rhetoric. They actually start carrying out mosque burnings, like this one in Dallas, Texas. They burned the mosque in New York. They burned mosques down here in Fort Pierce, in New Tampa, all over the place, just in the last couple of years. And they violated one of our mosques right here in Central Florida. This man who belonged to a white national group in Tampa actually vandalized our mosque. When he was arrested, he's part of a group. This last weekend, the law enforcement community arrested a bunch of Aryan Nation members who were planning to welcome Ramadan by attacking mosques. But we are Americans too. We have been here for a long time. And we are teachers, we are doctors, we are engineers, we're sports heroes like Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We belong here. This is our country. This is our home. And we are also Muslims who serve in the military. Like these people who went to Afghanistan and Iraq, proud American Muslims who are serving this country, defending our freedoms, fighting the terrorists. These young men and women represent the best of America. And some of them have paid with their lives. Like this young man, 20-year-old, after 9/11, he chose to enlist and go, and he was part of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where He gave his life to defend his comrades, and he earned the Purple Heart and Brown Star. Here in Central Florida, for years we have been working closely with law enforcement community. This is one of the meetings where I was speaking to leaders from the FBI and the police chiefs in Central Florida and the sheriffs before Pulse how to protect our community. This police officer, Captain Mark Canty, is a Muslim. He's a member in my community, over 20 years on the police force, and he is the SWAT commander who was there early morning on June 12th to free the hostages and to neutralize the attacker. People say, why don't you condemn terrorism? We do all the time. We have been doing it for many, many years. We did it on billboards, in newspapers, on radio, on television. But it's very difficult as a minority to get everyone to see it and hear it. But trust me, we do it all the time. We organized a major peace rally right here in downtown Orlando last year in the spring to speak up against terrorism on one hand and to speak up against Islamophobia, because we are getting crushed in between. As Americans, we refuse to surrender to either. And we took this message all the way to Washington. We organized a big March for America on the National Mall, and we joined with Jewish groups and Christian groups to send the message that as American Muslims, we are committed to our pledge as one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.